My son told me the luxury cruise I paid for was only for his wife's family. He told me to stay home conveniently, forgetting exactly whose credit card had secured every single one of those luxury suites. I stayed absolutely silent at the dock, watching them laugh from afar, until her ticket flashed a bright glaring red at the VIP gate, and the cruise director turned to ask me, "Sir, to which account should we process this $45,000 refund?" My name is Harrison. I am a 65-year-old black man, and I spent 35 years of my life as a logistics fleet manager. If you do not know what that job entails, let me paint you a picture. It means 14-hour days in sweltering dispatch yards. It means breathing in diesel fumes and exhaust from sunrise to sunset. It means managing hundreds of tired truck drivers solving supply chain disasters at 2 in the morning and carrying the weight of a massive company on your shoulders. I worked my fingers to the bone putting up with corporate politics and subtle disrespect, all to make sure my family never had to know the struggles I grew up with. I built a fortress of security for my son Derek. I made sure his hands stayed soft. I paid for his college in full so he would never know the crushing weight of a student loan. I gave him a head start in this world, hoping he would grow into a man of honor, respect, and loyalty. We are standing at the bustling Miami cruise terminal right now. The air conditioning inside the massive glass and steel building is blasting, fighting against the heavy Florida heat outside. The terminal smells like ocean salt, expensive coconut sunscreen, and the anxious sweat of 1,000 vacationers dragging heavy suitcases. There is a constant deafening roar of voices, laughter, and public address announcements echoing off the high ceilings. But for me, the entire world has gone completely silent. I am frozen in place, standing exactly 50 feet away, staring straight ahead at my 32-year-old son. Derek is standing near the shiny roped-off sections of the VIP check-in line. He is laughing. He is smiling so wide his face looks entirely foreign to me. Standing right next to him is his wife, Chloe. Chloe is a white American woman from a so-called prestigious family, though anyone with half a brain could see their prestige is nothing more than a hollow, rotting shell. She is wearing an oversized designer sun hat indoors and tapping her perfectly manicured nails against her premium leather purse. Surrounding them are her parents, Richard and Pamela. Richard is wearing a crisp, pastel polo shirt, trying his hardest to project the image of a wealthy country club patriarch. Pamela is standing beside him, squinting her eyes in that judgmental way she always does, looking down her nose at the porters who are struggling to lift their massive, overweight trunks. And then there is Todd, Chloe's older brother, a 36-year-old deadbeat who still lives in his parents' basement. Wearing a flashy watch he definitely put on a high-interest credit card, smelling like cheap cologne and unearned entitlement. And there is my son, Derek. The boy I raised to be a king is bustling around them like a hired servant. He is fetching their passports, handing them bottled waters, and carrying the heaviest bags, while Todd stands there scrolling through his phone. My heart twists in my chest. It is a sharp, burning pain that radiates all the way down my arms. I am standing near a massive concrete pillar, completely unnoticed by this picture-perfect aristocratic gathering. Suddenly, my phone vibrates in the front pocket of my slacks. The buzzing feels like an electric shock against my leg. I reach into my pocket and pull it out. The screen illuminates with a picture of Derek. My son is calling me. I look up. 50 feet away, I see Derek step away from his wife and her family. He turns his back to them, facing the large glass windows overlooking the dock, holding his phone to his ear. He has absolutely no idea that I am standing right behind him, hidden in the crowd, watching his every move. I press the green accept button and bring the phone to my ear. I do not say a word. I just listen. "Dad, hey, are you there?" Derek's voice comes through the speaker. He sounds nervous. His voice is tight, pitching up half an octave the way it always does when he is preparing to tell a lie. "I am here, Derek," I reply, keeping my voice perfectly flat and steady. "Listen, Dad. There has been a slight change of plans for today," he stammers. He shifts his weight from one foot to the other. I can see him doing it. I can see the cowardice in his posture. "Chloe and I were talking last night and, well, we feel like this trip really needs to be just her family. You know how it is. Her parents have been under a lot of stress lately, and Chloe really wants this cruise to be an intimate bonding experience, just for her side of the family, so they can reconnect." He pauses, waiting for me to absorb the blow. He does not know that I can hear the terminal announcements echoing through his phone, perfectly synchronized with the announcements echoing in the building around me. He does not know I am close enough to see the sweat glistening on the back of his neck. "You see, Dad, it would just be really awkward if you came." Derek continues his words, rushing out now in a pathetic torrent of excuses. "You and Richard do not really see eye to eye on things, and Pamela is very particular about her vacations. We just think it is best if you sit this one out. Stay home. Rest up. We can grab dinner when I get back in 2 weeks. Okay?" The audacity of his words hangs in the air between us. The absolute staggering disrespect. My chest tightens so fiercely that for a fleeting second, I wonder if my heart is finally giving out. I spent 35 years breaking my back in the sweltering heat of the freight yards, so this boy could stand in an air-conditioned terminal wearing a custom-tailored shirt. I sacrificed my own comfort, my own peace of mind, to make sure he had a seat at the table. And now he is kicking me out of the dining room entirely to please a family of broke, pretentious snobs who would not cross the street to spit on me if I were on fire. Derek is completely erasing me. He is erasing his father to buy the temporary approval of a family that secretly despises him. Richard and Pamela have never respected me. They look at my dark skin, my calloused hands, and my blue-collar history with undisguised contempt. They think they are better than me simply because they inherited a last name with a good credit score, even though I know for a fact their mortgage is underwater and their car payments are 3 months behind. They are parasites wrapped in silk, and my son has decided to serve them as his new masters. "Yeah, Dad, so just stay home," Derek repeats, growing more confident now that I have not interrupted him. "I am really sorry about the short notice, but it is for the best. Have a good week, all right?" He does not wait for my reply. He ends the call. I stand there, the phone still pressed against my ear, listening to the dead digital silence. I lower the phone and slip it back into my pocket. I watch Derek turn around, plaster a fake, bright smile back onto his face, and jog back over to Chloe. He wraps his arm around her waist and whispers something in her ear. She smiles a wicked, triumphant little smirk and pats his chest. Pamela claps her hands together in excitement, and Todd points toward the VIP boarding gate. They are celebrating. They are celebrating my absence. In that exact moment, the profound, agonizing grief inside me evaporates. It is completely burned away by a sudden, surging wave of boiling anger. The kind of anger that does not make you scream, but makes your vision crystal clear. The kind of anger that slows down your heartbeat and turns your blood to ice water. I do not yell. I do not curse out loud. I do not throw a tantrum like a child. I am a grown man. I am a 65-year-old black man who has survived a world that tried to break me every single day. I know how to maintain my dignity in the face of profound disrespect. I take a deep breath. The scent of the ocean and the exhaust from the cruise ships fills my lungs. I look down at my right hand. My knuckles are dark scarred and thick from decades of manual labor. I reach down and wrap those calloused fingers tightly around the leather handle of my suitcase. I adjust my suit jacket, stand up to my full height, and step out from behind the concrete pillar. I do not turn around and go home. I do not retreat into the shadows to lick my wounds. Instead, I march straight forward, my heavy shoes clicking rhythmically against the polished terminal floor. I walk directly toward the VIP check-in counter. I walk right up behind the very family that just threw me away. The battle lines have been drawn, and they have absolutely no idea what is about to hit them. I put one foot in front of the other. The wheels of my leather suitcase roll smoothly over the polished terrazzo floor of the cruise terminal, but every single step feels like I am wading through deep, thick mud. The vibrant calypso music playing from the overhead speakers and the cheerful chatter of vacationing families blur together into a dull, meaningless hum. My mind is caught in a terrible, repeating loop. I keep hearing the sound of my own son's voice dismissing me like a nuisance. I keep thinking about the money. $45,000. I need you to let that number sink in for a moment. $45,000 is not pocket change for a man who spent his entire life managing freight trucks in a dusty dispatch yard. That money was forged from sweat. It was built from missed holidays and from working grueling overtime shifts when my lower back screamed for rest. But more importantly, a very large chunk of that money came directly from the life insurance policy of my late wife. My beautiful wife worked as a public school teacher for 30 long years. She was the absolute heart and soul of our home. When a sudden illness took her from us 5 years ago, she left behind a modest policy. On her last day, she held my rough hands and made me promise to use that money for something that would bring our family together. She always believed that family was the only true wealth a man could ever possess. I kept that money safe and untouched in a high-yield account, waiting for the perfect moment to honor her final wish. When Derek called me a few months ago, bursting with pride to announce he had finally made junior partner at his corporate law firm, I knew the moment had arrived. I wanted to do something spectacular for him. I wanted to celebrate my boy. I wanted to book a trip so magnificent that it would bridge the widening gap between my working-class world and the upscale world of his new in-laws. I booked 5 luxury suites on this premium cruise line. I wanted us all to sit at the captain's table together, break bread, and finally feel like one united family. But blending our families was always a fool's errand. I see that with painful clarity now as I slowly close the distance between us. Richard and Pamela are standing near the front of the VIP line, looking completely put out by the mere inconvenience of having to wait for their boarding passes. They are the kind of people who wear their supposed wealth like a loud, cheap perfume. Richard is standing there in his crisp pastel shirt and forced boat shoe casualness, trying to project the image of a wealthy patriarch. Pamela is standing beside him with her tight, judgmental smiles and oversized designer sunglasses. From the very first day we met, they made it painfully obvious that a black logistics manager from the working-class side of town was not the pedigree they envisioned for their precious daughter. They never missed an opportunity to throw a backhanded compliment my way. I remember sitting at their pristine dining table while Richard swirled a glass of expensive wine and said, "I spoke so well for someone in the trucking industry." I remember Pamela chuckling and saying it was just so quaint how I actually fixed my own plumbing instead of calling a professional. They smiled warmly while they delivered these little cuts, wrapping their deep-seated prejudice in Southern hospitality and country club manners. But the bitter irony is that I know their financial reality. I know because Derek used to handle their taxes before he got too busy trying to impress them. I know they are drowning in country club debt. I know Richard leveraged his house to the absolute hilt to keep up his memberships, and Pamela maxes out credit cards to maintain the grand illusion of generational wealth. They are completely broke. They are a sinking ship draped in fine silk. Yet they look down their noses at me, a man who owns his home outright has zero debt, and built a comfortable nest egg through sheer, relentless hard work. The true tragedy of this situation is not their arrogance. The true tragedy is that my son bought into their shiny, hollow illusion hook, line, and sinker. I raised Derek to be proud of who he is and exactly where he comes from. I coached his little league baseball teams after working 14-hour shifts. I taught him how to tie a double Windsor knot. I taught him the value of an honest day's work and the importance of looking a man in the eye. But the moment he married Chloe, he started trying to scrub his own history clean. He started wearing the same pastel shirts as Richard. He started adopting their upper-class mannerisms, their arrogant sneers, and their hollow values. He became desperately hungry for their approval, groveling for a seat at a table that was built entirely on lies. I trusted my son implicitly. When my arthritis started acting up badly last year, I gave Derek full access to my financial accounts to help me manage my day-to-day bill payments. I gave him the keys to the castle because a father should always be able to trust his own flesh and blood. I believed he was an honorable man. But watching him right now standing at that ticket counter fetching water bottles for a family that secretly disrespects him while treating his own father like a dirty little secret is the ultimate betrayal. He is ashamed of me. He is ashamed of the man who literally broke his back so Derek could grow up with soft hands. He told me to stay home because my presence would ruin the aesthetic of their perfect aristocratic family vacation. He took my $45,000 gift and used it to buy the affection of a family that will drain him dry and discard him the very moment the money runs out. I am 40 feet away now. The physical sensation of the terminal seems to warp around me. Happy families are hugging their children. Elderly couples are holding hands and taking photos in front of the giant cruise line banners. Their joy feels like a sharp contrast to the cold, heavy isolation settling into my bones. Every step I take forward strips away another layer of the blinding, unconditional love I had for my son. I am replacing it with the cold, hard logic of a man who has survived in the corporate logistics world by identifying toxic assets and cutting them loose. 30 feet away. My heavy leather shoes click steadily against the polished floor. I can see the back of Todd's neck. Todd is Chloe's older brother. He is 36 years old, has not held a steady job in 5 years, and still relies on his parents to cover his car insurance. Yet there he is standing in the VIP line, shifting his weight from foot to foot, acting like he personally owns the entire cruise terminal. He is wearing a ridiculous bright tropical shirt and loudly complaining to Chloe about how long the boarding process is taking. Chloe is nodding furiously, crossing her arms and tapping her foot with profound impatience. She is a woman who has never worked a hard day in her life, expecting the world to roll out a red carpet for her simply because she exists. 20 feet away. The tension in my chest is a massive physical weight, but my mind is sharper than a razor blade. I am no longer the grieving widower holding on to the fragile memory of a unified family. I am no longer the indulgent father, making endless excuses for a son who lost his way. I am a man who has recognized a profound theft of respect. The noise of the terminal, the rolling suitcases, the laughing children, the intercom announcements seems to fade completely into the background. All I can focus on is the empty space right behind them at the counter, 10 feet away. I can hear Chloe's voice clearly now. It is high-pitched and whining. She is telling the gate agent to hurry up because they have a private lunch reservation at the premium steakhouse on board. Derek is standing slightly behind her, holding all the printed travel documents, looking like a nervous bellhop waiting for a tip. He has absolutely no clue that the very foundation of his fake reality is walking up right behind him. I watch him laugh at something Richard says, a weak, subservient laugh that makes my stomach turn. He sold his soul for a family that will never truly claim him. I step directly into the VIP line. I am so close I can smell the overpowering floral scent of Pamela's expensive perfume. I am just inches behind Todd and Chloe. They have not noticed me yet. They are too busy looking forward toward the gangway, too busy demanding the royal VIP treatment that my bank account paid for. I plant my feet firmly on the ground. I stand tall, squaring my broad shoulders. The air around us is thick with the heavy, suffocating calm that always comes right before a massive storm. I take a slow, deep breath, filling my lungs with air, waiting for the exact moment their beautiful illusion shatters into a million pieces. The line for the VIP check-in counter at the Miami cruise terminal is a fascinating place to observe human behavior. For 35 years, I managed logistics fleets. I spent my days analyzing supply chains, watching how heavy machines and exhausted men moved under pressure. I learned how to spot a system failure long before the red warning lights ever flashed on a dispatch board. You can always tell when something is about to break down just by watching the small details. Right now, I am watching a catastrophic breakdown happen in real time. It is not a fleet of trucks failing. It is my own family. Chloe walks up to the polished mahogany desk of the premium boarding area like she personally financed the construction of the entire ship. She is wearing a flowing white linen sundress and a designer sun hat so ridiculously large that the brim keeps hitting the shoulder of the elderly gentleman standing in the adjacent lane. She does not apologize to him. She does not even acknowledge his existence. She simply slams her expensive leather purse onto the counter with a loud, heavy thud that makes the young ticketing agent physically jump in her seat. The agent is a young woman probably no older than 25, wearing a crisp white uniform with a golden anchor pin neatly fastened to her lapel. She offers a warm, welcoming smile, but Chloe completely ignores her greeting. Chloe does not say good morning. She does not offer a polite hello. She simply thrusts her passport forward with a sharp, impatient flick of her wrist. Todd is standing right behind his sister. He is a 36-year-old man who still lives in his parents' basement, but he carries himself with the unearned swagger of a billionaire. He is wearing a bright tropical shirt left unbuttoned entirely too low, and a pair of designer sunglasses resting on the top of his head. He is holding a half-empty cup of iced coffee and grinning as he cracks some joke to his parents. Richard and Pamela are nodding along, hanging on his every word. Richard is standing with his chest puffed out, wearing a crisp pastel polo shirt, trying his absolute hardest to project the image of a wealthy country club patriarch. Pamela is standing beside him, squinting her eyes in that deeply judgmental way she always does, looking down her nose at the porters, who are struggling to lift their massive, overweight trunks onto the conveyor belts. And then there is my son. Derek is standing slightly behind them, all holding 3 different heavy travel bags. The boy I raised to be strong and proud is bustling around them like a hired servant. He is holding their water bottles. He is managing their luggage tags. He is nodding obediently at every single command Chloe barks at him over her shoulder. To watch a grown man, a junior partner at a corporate law firm, grovel for the approval of people who secretly despise him is a deeply painful thing for a father to witness. He sold his soul for a seat at their table, and they do not even respect him enough to let him hand his own passport to the agent. The young ticketing agent takes Chloe's passport with a polite nod. She types a few keys on her terminal and slides the booklet into the digital scanner. The scanner is a sleek black device with a glowing green ring around the edge. I can see the reflection of the computer screen in the glass partition, separating the desk from the waiting area. The system is loading. The little hourglass icon spins on the monitor. Chloe sighs heavily. She begins tapping her perfectly manicured fingernails against the mahogany counter in a rapid, irritating rhythm. She complains loudly to Todd about how long the process is taking. She states that VIP should mean instant access and that she is not used to waiting in lines with the general public. Todd nods in agreement, taking a loud slurp of his iced coffee. Then it happens. It is a beautiful, glorious moment of absolute technological justice. The scanner does not let out the pleasant, gentle chime of a successful check-in. Instead, it lets out a sharp, loud, descending electronic chirp. It is a harsh, grating sound of total rejection. A bright red light flashes across the kiosk screen, illuminating Chloe's face with a crimson glow. The young agent frowns. Her welcoming smile falters. She pulls the passport out, wipes the scanning strip with her sleeve, and tries sliding it through the machine a second time. The machine chirps again. It is louder this time. The red light pulses rapidly. The terminal security alarms give a soft, warning beep, echoing through the immediate area. Chloe stops tapping her nails. Her smug, entitled expression drops for just a fraction of a second, before morphing into pure, unadulterated annoyance. She leans over the counter, invading the agent's personal space, and asks what the problem is. She demands to know why a luxury booking is taking so long to process. The agent types furiously on her keyboard, her brow furrowed in deep confusion. She mumbles a quick apology and explains that the system is showing an error. Todd steps up to the counter. He slides his own passport across the polished wood, suggesting with a mocking laugh that maybe Chloe's microchip is just broken. He tells the agent to scan his document and get the process moving because they have a private lunch reservation at the premium steakhouse on board. The agent takes Todd's passport and slides it into the machine. Another loud rejecting chirp rings out. Another flashing red light pulses across the desk. The security terminal beeps again, drawing the attention of the other agents working nearby. The young woman looks up from her screen. Her face is completely pale. She swallows hard, clearly uncomfortable with the message displayed on her monitor. She looks directly at Chloe and explains that the tickets are flagged in the system. She says there is a strict security hold on the entire booking reservation for all 5 luxury suites. Chloe immediately raises her voice. Her tone goes from annoyed to hostile in the blink of an eye. She demands to know what a security hold means. She insists they are VIP guests traveling in the most expensive suites on the ship, and that this delay is absolutely unacceptable. She threatens to have the young woman fired. She threatens to call the corporate office. The agent remains professional, but her voice shakes slightly. She states clearly that the system has locked the boarding passes because of a major discrepancy. She explains that the rules for this specific premium booking require the primary card holder to be physically present at the desk to verify the tickets. She explains that the credit card used to purchase the $45,000 vacation must be swiped in person to clear the fraud alert and release the boarding passes. Richard and Pamela exchange confused, panicked glances. Their facade of wealthy superiority cracks instantly. They do not have the money to fix this. They look at Derek. Todd turns around and glares at Derek. Chloe snaps her fingers and points at Derek, commanding him to step forward and fix the issue with his card. Derek freezes. He stands completely still, dropping one of the heavy travel bags onto the floor. I can see the exact moment the reality of the situation crashes down on him. He knows he does not have the credit card. He knows he is not the primary card holder. He knows exactly whose name is stamped on the account that paid for this entire grand illusion. I watch his chest heave as sheer, absolute panic sets in. His breathing becomes shallow. He looks frantically around the terminal, searching for an escape route that does not exist. This is my cue. I let go of the breath I have been holding in my lungs. I step forward out from behind the massive concrete pillar. I step out of the crowd of waiting passengers and into the open space of the VIP lane. My heavy leather shoes make a steady, deliberate clicking sound against the terrazzo floor. I close the final 10 feet between us. I do not rush. I walk with the calm, steady authority of a man who has nothing left to lose and everything to reclaim. I am a father who has been erased, but I refuse to disappear quietly into the background. I walk right past Pamela, who does not even notice me. I walk right past Richard, who is too busy staring at the red flashing light on the scanner. I stop right behind Derek. He is staring at the floor, his mind racing for an excuse to tell his wife. He is sweating. I reach out my hand. My dark, scarred fingers rest heavily on the shoulder of his custom-tailored cotton shirt. I grip his shoulder firmly, letting him feel the weight of my presence. I lean in close right next to his ear. Need some help verifying those, son? Derek flinches, as if a current of high-voltage electricity has just shot straight through his spine. He spins around so fast he nearly trips over the travel bag at his feet. All the color instantly drains from his face, leaving him looking like a pale, terrified ghost. His jaw drops open, but no sound comes out. He looks exactly like a little boy who has just been caught stealing from the collection plate at church. He stares at me, his eyes wide with absolute horror, recognizing that his entire web of lies has just unraveled in spectacular fashion. Chloe whips her head around at the sound of my voice. Her eyes go wide. She turns pale, realizing the very man she just banished from the trip, the blue-collar worker she deemed too embarrassing to be seen with, is standing right here holding the keys to her luxury vacation. For a few seconds, the entire group is completely paralyzed by the shock of my arrival, but Chloe's shock only lasts for a brief moment. She is a woman raised on pure entitlement, and she does not know how to feel shame. She quickly shifts from pale shock to blazing hot indignation. Instead of showing any remorse or confusion, she ignores my presence entirely. She turns her back to me, slaps her hand flat against the mahogany counter, and glares at the terrified ticketing agent. Chloe screams that she does not care about primary card holders or security flags. She demands that the manager of the terminal be called immediately. She shouts that her family is not going to be held up by ridiculous technicalities and that they demand to board the luxury ship right this very second. She points a manicured finger at the agent and threatens to ruin the cruise line's reputation if the red light on that scanner is not turned green immediately. The terminal falls silent around us, as her voice echoes off the high glass ceilings, setting the stage for the absolute destruction I am about to unleash. Chloe continues to shriek at the young ticketing agent, her voice echoing off the high glass ceilings of the terminal. She is demanding managers, threatening jobs, and throwing around her family name as if it carries the weight of royalty. The agent shrinks back against her chair, her eyes darting nervously between the flashing red light on her scanner and the furious woman leaning over the mahogany counter. Richard and Pamela stand just behind their daughter, nodding in stern agreement, their faces set in masks of aristocratic outrage. Todd is checking his reflection in his dark sunglasses, entirely unbothered by the delay, assuming his sister will simply bully the world into giving them what they want. And then there is my son Derek. He is no longer looking at his wife or his in-laws. He is staring directly at me, his eyes wide with a terrifying realization. He knows exactly why I am here. He knows the house of cards he built is about to collapse under the weight of his own greed. I do not raise my voice to match Chloe's hysterical pitch. I do not need to. A man who knows his own power never needs to shout to control a room. I simply reach into the inner pocket of my tailored suit jacket and pull out my smartphone. The screen is cool and smooth against my calloused fingers. I unlock the device and tap the blue and gold icon of the premium cruise line application. The digital interface loads, instantly greeting me with a bright banner welcoming me to my luxury Caribbean voyage. I ignore the cheerful graphics and navigate straight to the master reservation dashboard. For 35 years, I managed the chaotic logistics of heavy freight across the country. I spent decades tracking delayed shipments, rerouting lost cargo, and identifying system failures through digital logs. I know how to read a data trail better than almost anyone. Every single action leaves a digital footprint, and my son was arrogant enough to believe I would never bother to look. I stepped forward, closing the final few inches between myself and the ticketing desk. I calmly slide my phone across the polished wood, positioning the screen directly under the agent's line of sight. Chloe stops yelling, caught entirely off guard by my sudden movement. She glares at me, her lips parted in mid-sentence, clearly wondering why this older black man is interfering with her demands. I look at the frightened agent and speak in a steady, resonant tone. I ask her to please match the master booking identification number on my screen with the flagged account on her terminal. The young woman blinks, her hands shaking slightly as she types the alphanumeric code from my phone into her keyboard. The system chimes. Her eyes widen as the master profile populates on her monitor. She looks up at me, her posture instantly shifting from defensive to deeply respectful. She realizes she is no longer dealing with a random bystander. She is looking at the man whose name is stamped on the primary credit card that funded this entire $45,000 spectacle. I ask her to confirm out loud who the primary financier of the reservation is. Her voice trembles just a bit as she reads my full name to the group. Richard and Pamela snap their heads toward me. Their expressions of haughty annoyance melt into profound confusion. Todd slowly lowers his iced coffee, his arrogant smirk fading into a blank stare. Chloe looks back and forth between me and Derek, her face flushing with a sudden ugly shade of red. Derek looks like he wants the polished terrazzo floor to open up and swallow him whole, but I am far from finished. The truth is an onion, and I am going to peel back every rotten layer right here in front of everyone. I reach over and tap the screen of my phone, opening the suite allocation tab. I tell the agent to look at the primary passenger listed for the Grand Owner's Suite. This is the crown jewel of the ship, a massive room with a private wraparound balcony, a personal butler, and exclusive dining privileges. It is the room I purchased for myself as a reward for decades of breaking my back in dusty dispatch yards. It is the room I earned through sweat, sacrifice, and the haunting grief of losing my beautiful wife. I read the name assigned to the suite out loud so it echoes clearly through the quiet space around our lane. The name on the screen is not mine. It is Todd's. I turn my gaze slowly toward Chloe's 36-year-old brother. I look at his unbuttoned tropical shirt, his cheap cologne, and his absolute lack of ambition. I let the sheer absurdity of the situation hang heavily in the air. My son, the boy I raised, to understand the value of an honest day's work, secretly logged into my account and transferred the most expensive suite on the entire vessel to a deadbeat who has not earned a single paycheck in 5 years. Derek took the ultimate symbol of my life's labor and handed it over to a man who contributes absolutely nothing to society, all to buy a fleeting ounce of approval from his wife's prejudiced family. Todd actually has the audacity to look away, shifting his weight uncomfortably under my piercing stare. Pamela clears her throat, her face tightening as she tries to process the humiliation of her golden boy being called out in public. But I do not let them recover. I keep pushing, driving the blade of truth deeper into the rotting wood of their deception. I tap the screen again, navigating to the modification history log. I point out the timestamps to the agent. I show her exactly when the changes were made. 3 weeks ago, late on a Tuesday night, my son accessed my booking using the financial passwords I trusted him with when my arthritis flared up. He did not just give my suite to Todd. He had to put me somewhere else. I scroll down to the bottom of the passenger manifest. I find my name. I read the new room assignment out loud. Deck 2, interior, room 2014. I know exactly where that room is because I studied the deck plans when I first bought the tickets. It is a tiny windowless box located in the absolute bowels of the ship. It sits directly adjacent to the mechanical bulkheads and the engine room. It is the kind of room that vibrates constantly, where the low, deafening hum of the massive diesel engines makes it impossible to find a moment of peace. My son took the man who raised him, the man who paid for his prestigious college degree, the man who funded this entire lavish vacation, and shoved him into a dark, noisy closet at the bottom of the ocean. He hid me away like a shameful secret, so his new family could parade around the upper decks without the embarrassment of my presence. A heavy, suffocating silence falls over the group. Even Chloe is speechless. She looks at Derek with wide eyes, completely unaware of the depth of his deceit. She thought her husband was a wealthy, successful provider who had generously arranged a flawless vacation for her family. Now she is realizing that her husband is nothing more than a desperate thief stealing from his own father to fund a lifestyle he cannot actually afford. I look at Derek. He is trembling. Tears are welling up in his eyes, but I feel absolutely no sympathy for him. The unconditional love I held in my heart for 32 years has been replaced by a cold, hardened resolve. He thought I was just an old, tired man who would quietly accept being pushed aside. He severely underestimated the man who raised him. But the final layer of this betrayal is the most venomous of all. It is the detail that truly proves the absolute decay of his moral character. I touch the screen of my phone one last time. I open the payment routing tab, sliding the detailed financial breakdown toward the ticketing agent. I point to the status of my windowless basement room. It says canceled. Derek did not even let me keep the miserable closet next to the engine room. He canceled my ticket entirely 3 days ago. He wiped my name completely off the passenger manifest. I ask the agent to explain the refund policy for a late cancellation. Her voice is barely a whisper as she reads the screen. She explains that because the cancellation was made so close to the departure date, the system only generated a partial refund of $850. I nod slowly, letting the paltry sum sink in. $850 out of a $45,000 investment, but the money did not go back to my primary credit card. I pull up the onboard credit ledger. Every single dollar on a cruise ship is tracked meticulously, and I know exactly how to follow the money. I show the agent the routing destination for that specific refund. I do not whisper. I project my voice so that the passengers in the adjacent lines can hear the absolute disgrace of my son's actions. The refund from my canceled ticket was deposited directly into an onboard spending account under Chloe's name. I turn to face my daughter-in-law. She is staring at me, her mouth slightly open, the color completely drained from her cheeks. I tell her exactly what her husband did. I tell her that Derek erased his own father's existence from this family vacation, just so he could scrape together an extra $800 for her spending account. He sold my presence, my dignity, and my love, just so she could afford a few extra deep tissue massages and hot stone mud wraps at the luxury spa on Deck 12. The silence that follows is absolute. The bustling noise of the Miami cruise terminal seems to vanish entirely. There is no more yelling. There are no more demands for managers. There is only the devastating, crushing weight of the truth. Richard is staring at the floor, his face red with a mixture of embarrassment and fury. Pamela is clutching her designer purse against her chest, looking at Derek as if he is a diseased rat that just crawled out of a sewer. They look down on me for my blue-collar background, but even their twisted, aristocratic minds cannot process the sheer depravity of a son stealing his father's ticket to fund a spa day. Their entire free ride is built on stolen money and shattered trust. Derek finally breaks. He lets out a pathetic, suffocated sob. He reaches a shaking hand toward me, his voice cracking as he tries to formulate an excuse. He stammers that he was going to tell me that he panicked, that the pressure of making Chloe's family happy was just too much for him to handle. He says he wanted to make everything perfect for them, and he lost control. I do not move. I do not offer him comfort. I look at the boy I carried on my shoulders, the boy I taught to ride a bicycle, the boy I worked double shifts to feed, and I see nothing but a hollow, empty shell of a man. He traded his integrity for an illusion, and now the illusion is burning to the ground right in front of his eyes. I turn my attention back to the ticketing agent. She is watching me with wide, sympathetic eyes, her hands resting gently on the keyboard. She understands the gravity of what is happening. She knows she is not just processing a ticketing error. She is witnessing a father severing the ties with a son who threw him away. The red light on the scanner continues to flash, casting a rhythmic crimson glow over the polished wood counter. It is a warning sign, a signal that a catastrophic failure has occurred. But the failure is not in the computer system. The failure is in the very fabric of my family, and the damage is absolutely irreversible. The heavy silence at the VIP counter is absolute and suffocating. For a few long seconds, nobody moves a single muscle. The young ticketing agent keeps her hands resting softly on her keyboard, watching the scene unfold with wide, terrified eyes. Chloe is standing frozen, with her mouth slightly parted, completely stripped of her usual arrogant bravado. Richard and Pamela are staring at the polished terrazzo floor, suddenly realizing that the very foundation of their luxury vacation is built on a staggering web of deceit. And Derek is trembling. My son is shaking like a leaf caught in a brutal winter wind. He is looking at me with a desperate, pleading expression, silently begging me not to humiliate him any further in front of his new, sophisticated family. But the universe has a funny way of bringing every single hidden truth into the blinding light when it is finally time for a reckoning. Just as the devastating reality of the canceled basement room settles over the group, a sharp, sudden vibration erupts against my leg. My smartphone buzzes inside the inner pocket of my tailored suit jacket. It is not a standard text message notification or a simple calendar reminder. It is a sustained, urgent pulse. It is a high-priority alert indicating that something is critically wrong. I do not break eye contact with my son immediately. I let him sweat under the crushing weight of my stare for another long moment before I slowly reach into my pocket and retrieve the device. The screen illuminates automatically as I lift it toward my face. A bright crimson banner stretches across the top of my display. It is an automated security warning from my primary banking institution. The algorithm has detected unusual and highly irregular activity on one of my linked accounts. For 35 years, I managed complex logistics in a dusty dispatch yard. I know how to spot a leak in a massive supply chain, and I know how to read a sudden financial discrepancy. I tap the notification, and the banking application prompts me for my biometric scan. The digital padlock unlocks, and the master dashboard of my financial life materializes on the screen. I have several different accounts, but my eyes are immediately drawn to a very specific joint savings portfolio. It is an account I opened exactly a decade ago. 10 years ago, Derek walked across a grassy university quad to receive his undergraduate degree. He was a young black man stepping into a fiercely competitive corporate world, and I wanted to make absolutely sure he never had to operate from a place of financial desperation. I knew the kind of sudden emergencies life could throw at a person without warning. An unexpected medical bill, a sudden job loss, a major transmission failure on a commuter vehicle. Those are the kinds of financial ambushes that can derail a young man's future and send him spiraling into inescapable credit card debt. So I created a safety net. I set up a joint emergency fund with his name attached to it. I deposited $5,000 on the day he graduated, and over the next decade, I quietly funneled a portion of my overtime pay into that specific account. Every single time I worked a brutal 14-hour shift in the sweltering, humid heat of the Georgia freight yards, I took a little bit of that blood money and transferred it over. Every time my lower back ached from standing on solid concrete all day, I found comfort in knowing that account was growing steadily. It had reached exactly $12,000 just a few months ago. It was a fortress of security. It was a quiet, invisible shield I built to protect my boy from the harsh, unforgiving realities of the world. I told Derek repeatedly that the money was there for a true crisis. It was a sacred lifeline to be used only when all other options were completely exhausted. I look down at the balance displayed on my phone screen right now. The number is a bold, glaring 0. The entire $12,000 balance has been wiped out. The account has been drained completely dry in one single devastating sweep. My thumb hovers over the smooth glass screen, and I tap on the recent transaction history to see exactly where the money went. The digital ledger loads instantly, displaying a massive single charge made just 48 hours ago. The merchant listed on the transaction line is a major premium commercial airline. The charge was for 4 first-class domestic tickets from their home state directly to the Miami International Airport. I tap the transaction details to expand the invoice. The names of the passengers attached to those first-class boarding passes populate on my screen one by one. Richard, Pamela, Todd, and Chloe. My son did not just drain the emergency fund I built for him with a decade of my sweat and manual labor. He looted it. He completely gutted the financial safety net I created to protect his future, and he used every single penny of it to purchase luxury first-class airfare for his deeply prejudiced, completely broke in-laws. He bought them wide, reclining leather seats. He bought them premium airport lounge access. He bought them hot towels and complimentary champagne for a 2-hour flight. He took the money I earned by breathing in diesel fumes and swallowing dirt in a logistics yard, and he handed it over to a family who looks down on me for the very job that paid for their lavish transportation. The transformation inside my chest is absolutely instantaneous. Any lingering trace of paternal sorrow completely evaporates into the cold, terminal air. The heartbreaking image of a misguided son trying too hard to impress his new wife vanishes forever. The deep aching pain of a grieving father mourning a fractured relationship burns away completely, leaving nothing behind but cold, calculated wrath. I look up from my phone and stare directly into Derek's eyes. I do not see a son anymore. I see a parasite. I see a weak, cowardly man who is willing to systematically bleed his own father dry just to maintain a hollow illusion of wealth for people who do not even like him. I slowly turn my head and look at Richard and Pamela. They are standing there in their expensive resort wear, clutching their boarding folders, looking incredibly nervous and uncomfortable under my unblinking gaze. I realize they are nothing but leeches. They are financial vampires perfectly content to drain the lifeblood out of a working-class man as long as they never have to acknowledge his humanity or treat him with an ounce of basic respect. They happily sat in those first-class seats, sipping top-shelf liquor, completely blind to the fact that their luxury was financed by a black man they consider utterly beneath their social station. And Derek facilitated every single second of it. He orchestrated the theft with breathtaking precision. He looked at the $12,000 I bled for and decided his in-laws' temporary comfort was infinitely more important than my lifelong sacrifice. The air in my lungs turns to absolute ice. The sheer, audacious scale of the theft is staggering to comprehend. It is not just about the stolen money. It is about the profound, ultimate disrespect for my life and my lifelong labor. Derek took the life insurance payout from his deceased mother to fund a private spa day for his entitled wife. Then he took the emergency savings I built for his future to fly her ungrateful parents down to Miami in first-class style. He planned to leave me sitting alone in an empty, quiet house hundreds of miles away, completely unaware that my entire financial legacy was being actively looted to support a family of arrogant frauds. I grip the smartphone in my hand so tightly that the metal casing presses painfully into the calluses on my palm. I am no longer a victim standing at a ticket counter, waiting for an apology that will never come. I am an apex predator who has just mapped out the entire anatomy of a trap. My mind begins to move with rapid mechanical precision. For 35 years, I solved impossible logistical nightmares by isolating the point of failure and completely amputating the damaged components from the entire supply chain. My son is a point of failure. His marriage to this woman is a toxic liability. This entire extended family is a catastrophic drain on my hard-earned resources. I lock eyes with Derek again. He sees the tectonic shift in my posture. He sees the complete absence of warmth and familiarity in my gaze. The pathetic, trembling boy standing in front of me finally realizes that he has not just crossed a line. He has burned the entire bridge to the ground and salted the earth behind him so nothing can ever grow there again. I watch his chest heave as he struggles to draw breath in the air-conditioned terminal. He opens his mouth to speak. He wants to offer another weak, pathetic excuse to justify stealing his mother's life insurance and my retirement money. But I raise my hand slightly off my side, silencing him instantly. I am done listening to his lies. I am done understanding his desperate need for validation. I am done being the silent financial foundation for people who treat me like dirt beneath their shoes. The time for sorrow has officially passed. The time for absolute, uncompromising justice has arrived. I am going to dismantle their entire fake aristocratic world brick by stolen brick right here in the middle of this busy terminal. The air in the terminal feels heavy and thick. The ambient noise of thousands of vacationing families seems to wash away completely, leaving only the sharp, focused reality of this single moment. I stand at the polished mahogany counter of the VIP check-in lane. The young ticketing agent is looking up at me with wide, uncertain eyes. She can sense the massive shift in the atmosphere. She knows she is no longer just processing boarding passes for a luxury vacation. She is standing on the front lines of a family, collapsing under the weight of its own deception. I reach into the inner pocket of my tailored jacket and pull out my solid metal premium credit card. The card feels heavy in my palm. It represents 35 years of breaking my back in dusty dispatch yards, managing chaotic supply chains, and sacrificing my own physical health so my son could have a better life. I place the metal card down on the glass counter. It makes a sharp, definitive sound that cuts through the tension. I look directly at the agent, and I do not lower my voice. I speak with the deep, resonant authority of a man who spent decades projecting his commands across acres of loud, roaring diesel engines. I want my voice to carry. I want the wealthy couples in the adjacent lanes to hear me. I want every single person standing nearby to witness exactly what happens when a father decides to take back his dignity. I tell the young woman that I am the sole primary account holder for this entire booking. I state my full name clearly and slowly. Then I point my calloused index finger toward the group standing completely frozen to my left. I inform the agent that I am officially and permanently revoking all financial authorization for these specific individuals. I list their names one by one so there is absolutely no confusion. Richard, Pamela, Todd, and Chloe. The color instantly drains from Richard's face. The arrogant country club patriarch who always looked at me with undisguised contempt suddenly looks like a frightened child. He opens his mouth to protest, but the words completely die in his throat. He tries to puff out his chest and salvage some shred of his artificial upper-class dignity, but I do not give him the chance to speak. I maintain my focus entirely on the ticketing agent. I instruct her to pull up the master onboard account ledger. I know exactly what I paid for when I set up this trip. I wanted them to have the absolute best because I thought we were celebrating my son's success. Now I am going to dismantle that luxury piece by piece. I tell the agent to locate the unlimited premium beverage packages linked to their 4 profiles. I describe the packages out loud. Top shelf liquor, vintage wines, unlimited craft cocktails by the private pool. Those packages alone cost thousands of dollars. I watch Pamela's eyes widen in absolute horror as I instruct the agent to cancel every single one of them immediately. Pamela enjoys her afternoon martinis and her expensive evening wines. She expected to drink on my dime for 2 solid weeks while treating me like a second-class citizen. That free ride ends today. The agent types furiously on her keyboard. She nods respectfully and confirms that the beverage packages have been voided. I do not stop there. I tell her to open the shore excursion manifest. I had booked a series of incredibly lavish private experiences for the group. I tell the agent to find the private helicopter tour over the tropical islands that Chloe had demanded. Cancel it. I tell her to locate the exclusive VIP beach cabana reservation, complete with private waitstaff, that Pamela insisted they needed for their comfort. Cancel it. I tell her to find the deep-sea scuba diving adventure that Todd booked for himself. Cancel it. I stand tall and unmoving as I strip away $15,000 worth of sheer, unadulterated luxury upgrades. I watch the computer screen as the digital receipts print out in long streams of negative balances. $15,000 of spa treatments, private dinners, and extravagant shore excursions wiped out with a few simple keystrokes. The absolute panic that sets into the in-laws is a profound thing to witness. It is not just the disappointment of losing a vacation perk. It is the raw, visceral terror of financial exposure. On a premium luxury cruise line, your onboard account is your entire lifeline. If you do not have an authorized credit card on file, you are effectively a ghost. You cannot buy a simple cup of coffee in the morning. You cannot tip a porter to carry your heavy bags. You cannot eat at any of the specialty dining rooms. Richard begins to pat the pockets of his pastel polo shirt. His face turns a blotchy, uneven shade of purple. He is sweating profusely under the bright terminal lights. He knows his own credit cards are completely maxed out. He knows that if he tries to swipe his card at this mahogany desk to replace my authorization, the terminal will loudly decline his transaction in front of half the population of Miami. His entire identity is built on projecting extreme wealth and superiority, but right now he cannot even afford to buy his wife a bottle of water in the departure lounge. The wealthy, sophisticated patriarch is suddenly and violently exposed as a penniless fraud standing helpless in a public terminal. Todd lets out a loud, obnoxious groan. He acts like a massive, overgrown toddler who just had his favorite toy snatched away. He complains loudly about his canceled scuba diving trip, entirely oblivious to the monumental gravity of the situation. He mutters something under his breath about how unfair this is, showing absolutely no awareness that he has not held a steady job in 5 years and has no right to demand anything. Then the true storm finally breaks. Chloe realizes that her lavish Instagram-ready vacation is rapidly evaporating into thin air. The luxurious private spa days and the helicopter tours she planned to brag about to her friends are gone. The realization hits her like a physical blow. She spins around and turns her absolute fury onto my son. Chloe begins shrieking at Derek. Her voice loses all of its refined, cultivated charm and becomes harsh and grating. She demands that he fix this right now. She orders him to pull out his own wallet and hand his premium credit card to the agent. She yells that he is a junior partner at a prestigious corporate law firm and that he needs to start acting like a man who can provide for his wife. She commands him to restore the beverage packages and rebook the VIP cabana immediately. The entire VIP boarding area falls dead silent as her shrill voice echoes off the glass walls. The wealthy couples in the adjacent lines turn their heads to watch the spectacle. Derek simply stands there. His shoulders are slumped forward, and his eyes are cast downward toward the polished floor. He does not reach for his wallet. He does not step up to the counter to defend his wife. He looks completely and utterly broken. Chloe shoves him hard in the chest with both hands. She demands to know what he is waiting for. She tells him to stop humiliating her family and just pay the $15,000 to restore their vacation. Derek slowly shakes his head. He mumbles something so quietly that Chloe has to lean in to hear him. She asks him to repeat himself, her voice dripping with venomous impatience. My son finally looks up. His face is a mask of pure devastation. He confesses right there in the middle of the crowded terminal that he cannot fix it. He tells his wife that he does not have the money. The confession hangs in the air like thick black smoke. Chloe stares at him, her mouth hanging open in sheer disbelief. She demands to know what he means. She reminds him of his massive salary and his prestigious job title. Derek breaks down completely. The truth spills out of him in a pathetic, desperate rush. He admits that his fancy job title is mostly for show. He admits that his entire corporate salary goes directly toward paying the massive mortgage on the penthouse she demanded they buy. He admits that every remaining dollar goes toward her luxury car lease, her expensive country club dinners, and the endless, crushing cycle of their lifestyle inflation. He confesses that he has absolutely zero savings left in his name. He confesses that his credit cards are completely maxed out, just trying to keep up with the absurd standard of living she and her parents expect from him. He looks at her with tears streaming down his face and admits the ultimate humiliating truth. His entire existence as a wealthy, successful provider was completely propped up by the financial safety net of the working-class black father he just tried to throw away. I was the silent, invisible pillar holding up his fake aristocratic life. Without my money, he is absolutely nothing. The illusion shatters completely. The pristine, flawless image of the Sterling family crumbles into dust right there on the terminal floor. Chloe looks at the man she married, and her eyes fill with pure, unadulterated disgust. She realizes that she did not marry a wealthy savior. She married a financial hollow shell. Richard and Pamela stare at Derek in absolute horror. The man they barely tolerated because they thought he was their golden ticket is actually just as broke as they are. The entire dynamic of their relationship flips in an instant. They look at me, the man they treated like dirt, the man whose blue-collar roots they mocked behind closed doors. They realize that I am the only person standing in this circle who holds any real, actual power. I am the only one who owns my life outright. I watch this entire miserable scene unfold with absolute icy calm. For 32 years, I poured every ounce of my love, my energy, and my hard-earned money into making sure my son would never have to experience the bitter sting of poverty. I protected him from every storm. I absorbed every financial blow so he could stand tall. And he repaid me by treating me like an embarrassing burden the moment he thought he had secured his place in a higher social class. He thought he could silently erase me from this trip. He thought he could steal the money from his dead mother's life insurance and my emergency savings to fund a fantasy life for a woman who only loves his perceived bank account. He thought I was just a tired old man who would quietly accept being shoved into the shadows. He severely underestimated the strength of a father who has finally opened his eyes. The young ticketing agent clears her throat, quietly breaking the heavy silence. She looks at me with profound respect, and asks if there is anything else I would like to adjust on the master itinerary. I look down at my son. He is weeping silently, his entire world collapsing around him. I look at Chloe, who is glaring at him with pure hatred. I look at Richard and Pamela, who are standing frozen in humiliated poverty. The $15,000 in canceled excursions and drink packages was just the beginning. That was simply the process of trimming the fat. Now it is time to bring the entire structure down to the ground. I turn back to the ticketing agent and prepare to deliver the final devastating blow that will leave them stranded, with absolutely nowhere to turn. The era of my blind, unconditional sacrifice has officially come to an end. The air inside the VIP boarding area is practically vibrating with the fallout of the canceled luxury excursions. I am standing perfectly still, letting the chaotic reality wash over the people who thought they could casually discard me. My right hand is still gripping my smartphone. The screen is still glowing with the digital evidence of my son's ultimate betrayal. $12,000. That number burns in my mind. It is not just a sequence of digits on a banking ledger. That money represents a decade of grueling labor in the blistering Georgia heat. It represents thousands of miles driven, millions of pounds of freight managed, and countless hours of sleep I permanently surrendered to ensure my child would never experience the bitter taste of poverty. I lift the phone slightly, keeping my eyes locked dead onto Derek's face. I navigate away from the cruise line application and open my dial pad. I type in the 10-digit emergency number for my banking institution's dedicated fraud division. I do not bring the device to my ear. Instead, I tap the small speakerphone icon and hold the phone flat in the palm of my hand, extending it just a few inches forward so the sound will project clearly into the quiet space around us. The phone rings once. It rings twice. The electronic tone echoes sharply against the marble floors and glass partitions of the Miami terminal. Derek is staring at the device as if it is a live explosive. He does not know exactly who I am calling, but the primitive survival instinct in his brain is screaming that whatever happens next is going to be absolutely devastating. A crisp, highly professional voice cuts through the thick tension. Thank you for calling Premium Fraud Services. My name is Jonathan. I am speaking with a verified primary account holder. How can I assist you today, sir? I speak with a slow, deliberate cadence. It is the kind of voice that commands absolute attention, the kind of voice I use to direct hundreds of heavy machine operators during a severe supply chain crisis. Hello, Jonathan. My name is Harrison. I am calling to report a massive unauthorized financial breach on my profile. I need to initiate a formal federal fraud investigation immediately. Derek flinches. His shoulders jerk upward as if he has been physically struck by a heavy wooden plank. Chloe whips her head around her perfectly styled blonde hair flying across her face. Richard and Pamela freeze completely rigid in their expensive resort wear. The smug, aristocratic superiority they wore just 5 minutes ago has completely vanished. Jonathan asks me to confirm my identity for security purposes. I calmly recite my full social security number, my date of birth, and my secure verbal passphrase. I do this openly and completely unafraid of who hears it, because the only thief in my immediate vicinity is already standing right in front of me. Jonathan confirms my profile is authenticated. He asks me to specify the fraudulent activity so he can lock down the compromised assets. I do not take my eyes off my son. I stare directly into his panicked, terrified soul. I tell the banking agent to look at the joint emergency savings account ending in 4729. I tell him to look at the single massive transaction processed exactly 48 hours ago for $12,000, routed directly to a commercial airline. I describe the purchase out loud for the entire group to hear. 4 first-class domestic boarding passes, I make absolutely sure to enunciate the words first class. I want Richard and Pamela to hear exactly how their luxurious transportation was funded. They prance around acting like they are American royalty, but they flew down to Miami on the stolen sweat of a black working-class man. They sat in wide reclining leather seats, sipping complimentary champagne and wiping their hands with hot towels, completely blind to the fact that their luxury was financed by the very man they consider utterly beneath their social station. I tell Jonathan that I did not authorize that transfer under any circumstances. I tell him that the secondary user on the account bypassed the intended security protocols to drain the funds for personal luxury travel expenses without my explicit consent. I declare it as outright felony theft. Jonathan maintains his sterile corporate tone, but I can hear the sudden urgency in his keystrokes. He informs me that because the stolen amount exceeds $10,000, it automatically triggers a high-tier federal investigation protocol. He asks me to confirm if I wish to proceed, knowing that it will immediately lock the funds, freeze all associated assets, and potentially involve law enforcement contacting the merchant to flag the ticket holders. I do not hesitate for a single fraction of a second. I say, yes, Jonathan, lock it down. Lock every single piece of it down right now. The realization crashes into the in-laws like a runaway freight train. Pamela physically stumbles backward, bumping hard into her oversized designer luggage. Her jaw hangs open in sheer aristocratic horror. She looks at her husband Richard with wide, panicked eyes. Richard is gripping the handle of his suitcase, his knuckles turning completely white under the strain. They are suddenly realizing that their golden ticket son-in-law is not a wealthy corporate savior. He is a common thief. They just traveled across the country on stolen funds, and they are now standing in the middle of an international port, heavily implicated in a major financial crime. The psychological destruction of their superiority complex is absolute, and it is beautiful to witness. But I am not done stripping the meat from the bone. I tell Jonathan there is another critical issue we must address. I instruct him to pull up my primary checking account. Years ago, when Derek first started law school, I gave him a platinum supplementary credit card. It was meant strictly for extreme emergencies. A flat tire on the highway, or a sudden, unexpected medical bill. I never asked him to return it, because a father always wants his son to have a solid safety net. Over the last 2 years, I noticed small creeping charges appearing on that specific card. A $200 charge at a high-end hair salon. A $400 charge at a boutique shoe store. I knew perfectly well it was Chloe swiping it. I let it slide because I wanted to keep the peace. I swallowed my pride and quietly paid the bills out of my own pocket to avoid causing friction in his new marriage. But the era of keeping the peace is officially dead and buried. I tell Jonathan to instantly freeze every single supplementary card attached to my name. I tell him to terminate the platinum card ending in 8813 permanently. I hear Chloe gasp loudly. It is a sharp, desperate intake of air. She recognizes the last 4 digits of that account. It is the card currently sitting inside her premium leather purse. It is the card she uses to secretly fund her daily illusions of grandeur when Derek's empty bank accounts decline her purchases. I watch the color drain from her face as she realizes her primary source of free income has just been vaporized in front of her parents. Jonathan types rapidly on his end. The sound of his mechanical keyboard is a beautiful symphony of absolute justice. He confirms that the airline charge is under active fraud review. The joint savings account is permanently frozen, and all supplementary credit cards have been deactivated, effective immediately. He asks if there is anything else he can assist me with today. I tell him, no, Jonathan, you have been incredibly helpful. I press the red button and end the call. The terminal returns to its normal ambient noise, but our little circle is trapped in a vacuum of profound devastation. The upbeat calypso music playing from the ceiling speakers feels like a mocking soundtrack to their complete financial ruin. Derek completely and utterly shatters. The slick, confident lawyer facade melts away like wax over an open flame, leaving behind a terrified, pathetic little boy. He lets go of the expensive travel bags he was diligently holding for his in-laws. The bags hit the terrazzo floor with a loud, heavy thud that makes Pamela flinch. He takes 2 frantic steps toward me, abandoning all pretense of control. Sweat is pouring down his forehead, stinging his eyes, and soaking the stiff collar of his custom-tailored shirt. He reaches out with trembling hands, but he does not dare touch my suit. He leans in close, dropping his voice to a desperate, frantic whisper, trying to hide his breakdown from the people around us. "Dad, please," he whispers, his voice cracking with raw panic. "I am begging you. Do not do this right now. Please stop. You are humiliating me. You are embarrassing me in front of my new family. You are ruining my life." The word embarrassing echoes in my mind, bouncing around the walls of my skull. It is a word that ignites a fierce, righteous inferno deep within my soul. He just stole $12,000 of my blood and sweat to buy airplane tickets for people who treat me like garbage. He just tried to banish me to a windowless basement and cancel my boarding pass just to buy his entitled wife a mud wrap at a cruise ship spa. He completely erased my existence to please a group of arrogant bigots who despise my very shadow. And he has the absolute unmitigated gall to stand here sweating like a pig and claim that I am the one embarrassing him. I look down at him. I do not raise my voice, but my tone is as cold and hard as a forged steel beam. I speak slowly, ensuring every single syllable cuts directly to the bone. "I am not embarrassing you, Derek," I say softly, keeping my gaze locked on his terrified eyes. "You embarrassed yourself the exact moment you decided a fake life was worth more than a real father. You sold your integrity to buy a seat at a table where you are not even respected. You stole from the man who gave you everything just to impress people who have absolutely nothing." Derek opens his mouth to argue, to formulate some brilliant legal defense, but the words fail him completely. He looks back over his shoulder at Chloe. His wife is not looking at him with love or support. She is glaring at him with pure, unadulterated disgust. She realizes she married a man who cannot provide the life he promised her. She realizes she married a fraud. I step back, creating a clear physical boundary between myself and the wreckage of his choices. I look at the ticketing agent, who is watching the scene with quiet awe. I am ready to conclude my business at this counter. The financial umbilical cord has been severed. The leeches have been starved. Now it is time to leave them stranded on the dock and walk away into the sunlight. The heavy tropical air of the Miami terminal presses against the giant glass windows, but inside the premium VIP lounge, the atmosphere is as cold as a frozen tundra. I stand with my shoulders squared and my back perfectly straight. The smartphone is safely tucked away in my tailored suit pocket. The financial guillotine has dropped. The silence stretches out, creating a massive, invisible canyon between the man I am today and the ungrateful people standing just a few feet away. I look at my son, Derek. He is a junior partner at a corporate law firm, but right now he looks like a frightened little boy who just realized the training wheels have been permanently removed. Chloe is practically hyperventilating. Her chest is heaving under her expensive white linen dress. The realization that she is married to a man with zero actual wealth is short-circuiting her highly materialistic brain. I slowly pivot my body away from the wreckage of their dignity. I turn my attention back to the young ticketing agent standing behind the polished mahogany counter. She has been watching this entire family drama unfold with wide eyes and absolute professionalism. She knows exactly who holds the power in this scenario. She looks at me with a quiet, respectful understanding. She asks me if there are any final adjustments I need to make to the primary reservation file before I proceed to the boarding ramp. I place my hands flat on the cool, smooth glass of the counter. I take a deep, slow breath, drawing the crisp, air-conditioned oxygen deep into my tired lungs. I have spent my entire adult life building things. I built a solid marriage with my beautiful late wife. I built a comfortable nest egg through 35 years of managing heavy logistics in the sweltering Georgia heat. I built a foundation for my son so he could reach heights I only dreamed of. But sometimes a man has to tear down a rotten structure before it collapses and crushes him entirely. I look the agent right in the eye and speak with a calm, measured clarity. I tell her to look at the master passenger manifest for the 5 luxury suites booked under my primary account. I tell her I am ready to make my final modification to the itinerary. Cancel every single suite under this booking. I say, my voice carrying effortlessly across the quiet boarding area. Cancel the grand suites. Cancel the balcony rooms. Cancel the ocean view cabins. Cancel every single ticket attached to this master file except for one. Chloe lets out a sharp, piercing gasp. Richard and Pamela both step forward, their expensive boat shoes squeaking against the terrazzo floor. Todd actually drops his iced coffee. The plastic cup hits the ground with a wet slap, splashing cold brown liquid across the pristine white tiles. I do not even turn my head to acknowledge their panic. I keep my eyes locked entirely on the ticketing agent. I tell her to isolate my personal profile. I tell her to rebook me into the finest available single cabin on the ship and to completely void the remaining 6 tickets. I instruct her to process a total structural cancellation for Derek, Chloe, Richard, Pamela, and Todd. I tell her to take the massive remaining balance of those luxury suites and refund every single penny directly back to my original primary credit card. The young agent nods her head. Her fingers begin to fly across the computer keyboard in a flurry of rapid, determined motion. Click, click, click. Every single keystroke sounds like a heavy iron gate slamming shut on their fake aristocratic paradise. Derek steps forward and grabs the edge of the mahogany counter. He is shaking so violently that the wood actually rattles. "Dad, please," he begs, his voice cracking into a high-pitched whine. "You cannot do this. We flew all the way down here. Our bags are packed. The cruise leaves in 2 hours. Where are we supposed to go? How are we supposed to get home?" I slowly turn my head to look at the boy I raised. I look at his custom-tailored shirt soaked in terrified sweat. I look at his expensive watch and his designer belt. He wrapped himself in the superficial armor of the upper class, but underneath it all, he is just a hollow shell. I tell him he should have thought about his return trip before he decided to steal $12,000 of my hard-earned emergency savings to fly his in-laws down here in first class. I tell him he should have considered his living arrangements before he tried to banish his grieving father to a windowless basement room next to the ship engines. I tell him that he is a grown man with a prestigious corporate job and he can figure out his own logistics from this moment forward. I am officially retiring from the business of funding his illusions. Chloe suddenly pushes past her husband. Her face is twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. She slams her hands on the counter and screams at the ticketing agent to stop typing. She shouts that this is completely illegal. She yells that she is a VIP guest and that her family has a basic human right to board that ship. She demands that the terminal security guards come over and arrest me for ruining her luxury vacation. The agent does not stop typing. She does not even flinch. She is following the strict protocol of the cruise line, which dictates that the primary financier holds absolute control over the master booking. She presses the final execute button on her terminal. The computer system lets out a sharp, definitive electronic chime. It is the sound of total financial execution. The agent looks up at me with a polite, professional smile. She prints out a long, detailed receipt and slides it across the glass partition. She informs me that the modifications are completely finalized. 6 luxury tickets have been entirely voided. The massive financial balance of nearly $40,000 has been successfully routed back to my primary banking institution. She hands me a single gold-colored boarding pass with my name printed clearly across the top. She tells me my new cabin is ready and wishes me a wonderful, peaceful voyage. Poof! Just like that, the grand illusion is completely wiped off the face of the earth. In a matter of mere seconds, their entire extravagant reality has been vaporized into digital dust. The $15,000 worth of premium drink packages and private beach cabanas are gone. The massive luxury suites with the wraparound balconies and the personal butlers are gone. The entire $45,000 joyride built on the stolen life insurance money of my late wife has been instantly and permanently dissolved. I take my single gold boarding pass and carefully slide it into the inner pocket of my suit jacket. I pick up my leather overnight bag. I turn around to face the wreckage of the Sterling family one last time. The scene before me is an absolute masterpiece of poetic justice. Richard and Pamela are standing completely frozen in the middle of the VIP lane. They are surrounded by 5 massive, overweight designer steamer trunks. They do not have a dime to their names. Their personal credit cards are maxed out to the absolute limit. They cannot afford to buy a boarding pass on another cruise line. They cannot afford to rent a luxury hotel room in Miami for the week. They probably cannot even afford the cab fare to get themselves back to the international airport. The wealthy country club patriarch and his judgmental wife are officially stranded in a public terminal, surrounded by thousands of strangers, holding on to heavy luggage they cannot even carry themselves. Todd is staring at his splashed iced coffee on the floor, looking completely lost. He has no job, no money, and no free ride to a private scuba diving excursion. He is going to have to stand in the brutal Miami heat and figure out how to survive the week without my bank account paving his way. Chloe is sobbing loudly. Her wide-brimmed designer sun hat is knocked sideways on her head, making her look ridiculous and disheveled. She is glaring at Derek with a level of hatred that guarantees their marriage will not survive the flight home. She married him because she thought he was a limitless ATM machine. Now she knows he is just a broke, desperate man who got caught stealing from his own father and Derek. My son is standing perfectly still, staring blankly at the red flashing light on the ticketing kiosk. He has lost everything. He lost the respect of his wife's family. He lost his financial safety net. But most importantly, he lost the unconditional love and protection of the father who would have moved mountains for him. I do not feel the crushing heartbreak I expected to feel. I do not feel the urge to rescue him. When you spend your life managing heavy freight, you learn that you cannot carry a broken trailer forever. Eventually, you have to detach the dead weight and drive the cab forward, or the entire rig will crash into the ditch. Derek chose to detach himself from me a long time ago. I am simply making the paperwork official. I look at him and I speak my final words to the boy I used to know. I tell him to have a safe trip back home. I tell him he has a lot of time to think about the kind of man he wants to be. I do not wait for his response. I turn my back on the entire miserable group. I grip the handle of my leather bag and I walk away. I walk past the mahogany counter. I walk past the security checkpoint. I step onto the long carpeted gangway leading up to the massive luxury cruise ship. The tropical sunshine spills through the panoramic windows, warming my face and my shoulders. The air feels lighter. My chest feels expansive and free. The heavy, suffocating burden of trying to buy the love of a son who is ashamed of my blue-collar roots has been completely lifted from my soul. I board the ship as a free man. I am a man who owns his life, his wealth, and his dignity outright. I have a long, peaceful voyage ahead of me, and for the first time in a very long time, I am looking forward to the quiet, open water. The truth is a powerful cleansing force. It burns away the rot and leaves only the solid foundation behind. I built my foundation on hard work, honesty, and the enduring love of a good woman. Derek built his foundation on lies, greed, and the desperate need for upper-class validation. Now he gets to stand in the middle of that terminal and watch his entire fake world crumble into dust. He gets to explain to his furious, penniless in-laws exactly how they are going to drag their massive trunks out to the curb and find a way back home. I hand my gold boarding pass to the smiling attendant at the ship entrance. I step into the grand atrium. The beautiful calypso music drifts through the air, blending with the cheerful chatter of the passengers around me. I take a deep breath of the ocean breeze. My wife would have loved this ship. I know she is watching over me right now, proud that I finally stood up for the respect and the legacy she helped me build. The journey ahead belongs entirely to me. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button to support a hard-working father. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss my next life story. Tell me in the comments where you are watching this video from and what time it is there right now. It brings a lot of joy to this old man's heart to see how far my words have traveled. The immediate fallout of a complete financial demolition is not loud. It does not start with a massive explosion or a sudden scream. It begins with a profound and suffocating silence that seems to suck all the oxygen right out of the room. I stand there on the polished terrazzo floor of the Miami cruise terminal, watching the invisible shockwave roll through the group standing before me. The cheerful tropical music playing from the ceiling speakers feels like a cruel and ironic joke against the absolute devastation painted across their pale faces. Hundreds of other passengers are bustling past us, pulling their wheeled luggage and laughing with their excited children, but inside our small circle, the air has turned to solid, freezing ice. I have spent my entire adult life working in the heavy logistics industry. I know exactly what happens when a massive, heavy structure loses its core foundational support. It hangs suspended in the thin air for just a fraction of a second before gravity takes over and pulls the whole rotting thing crashing down to the concrete. That is exactly what is happening to the fake aristocratic empire my son tried to build. It is falling completely and utterly apart right before my eyes. Pamela is the first one to crack under the immense pressure. The sophisticated country club matriarch who has spent the last 2 years looking at me like I am a smudge of dirt on her pristine white shoes suddenly loses every single ounce of her refined southern charm. The mask of polite high society superiority slips completely off her face and shatters into a million jagged pieces on the terminal floor. Her features contort into an ugly, twisted expression of pure, unadulterated panic. She drops her expensive designer handbag onto the top of her luggage and spins her entire body toward Derek. The sheer venom that pours out of her mouth is absolutely shocking to witness. She points a shaking, manicured finger right at my son's chest, and her voice erupts into a shrill, terrifying shriek that echoes loudly off the high glass ceilings. She screams that he is a useless, pathetic fraud. She yells that he presented himself as a highly successful corporate attorney who could provide a life of absolute luxury for her precious daughter. She demands to know how he dared to drag her family all the way down to a public passenger terminal in Miami, only to strand them like common street vagrants. Pamela does not hold back a single ounce of her deep-seated cruelty. She screams that she should have known a man from his working-class background could never truly elevate himself to their level. She spits the words out with so much spite that the true depth of her prejudice is laid bare for the entire world to see. She thought Derek was her golden ticket to maintaining a wealthy lifestyle she could no longer afford on her own. Now she realizes that he is completely broke, and that her first-class airplane tickets were bought with stolen funds belonging to the very black man she spent the last 2 years quietly insulting behind closed doors. Richard steps up right beside his wife, but he does not try to calm her down. The man who always wore his crisp pastel polo shirts like a uniform of superiority is now sweating profusely under the bright terminal lights. Dark, wet patches are blooming under his arms, and his face has turned an unhealthy shade of crimson. He looks around the crowded terminal with wide, terrified eyes, realizing that they do not have a single dime to pay for a luxury hotel room or a premium flight back home. He demands that Derek fix the situation immediately. He orders my son to call his bank to take out a personal loan or to do whatever it takes to get their luxury cruise suites back. Richard is practically hyperventilating, stating that he will not be humiliated in a public terminal and that his wealthy country club friends would laugh him out of the state if they ever found out he was stranded without a penny to his name. But Derek cannot fix anything. He just stands there frozen and trembling, while his furious in-laws absolutely shred whatever tiny sliver of dignity he has left. Then Todd decides to join the fray. I watch Chloe's 36-year-old brother regress into an actual toddler right before my eyes. Todd has not held a steady paycheck in 5 long years. He lives entirely off the fumes of his parents' exhausted credit lines and spends his days pretending to be a successful entrepreneur. The sudden realization that his free scuba diving trips and his unlimited premium liquor packages are permanently gone completely short-circuits his lazy brain. Todd lets out a loud, frustrated groan and kicks his expensive leather suitcase as hard as he can. The heavy boot of his shoe strikes the side of the luggage, making a loud, hollow thud that startles a passing family. He curses loudly, complaining that this is the absolute worst day of his entire life. He crosses his arms over his unbuttoned tropical shirt and actually begins to pout. He whines to his mother that his luxury vacation is ruined and blames Derek for being a cheap, broke loser. He paces back and forth in a tight little circle, acting exactly like a spoiled child who just had his favorite toy thrown into an incinerator. He does not care about the theft. He does not care that my heart was broken by my own flesh and blood. He only cares that his free ride has been abruptly and permanently canceled. But the most brutal and devastating blow comes from Chloe. She steps directly into Derek's personal space, closing the distance between them. She does not look sad or heartbroken about the state of her marriage. She looks at her husband with a level of cold, calculating disgust that makes my own blood run completely cold. She looks at him like he is a piece of rotting garbage stuck to the bottom of her expensive designer sandals. She asks him if it is true. She demands to know if his bank accounts are really empty, and if his corporate salary is entirely eaten up by their massive mortgage and her luxury car lease. Derek cannot even look her in the eye to answer the question. He simply nods his head, staring down at his expensive leather shoes in total defeat. Chloe lets out a sharp, bitter laugh that cuts right through the ambient noise of the busy terminal. She tells him he is utterly pathetic. She does not hold back a single ounce of her cruelty as she dismantles his entire sense of self-worth. She unleashes a torrent of absolute viciousness, telling Derek that the only reason she ever agreed to marry him was because she thought he had deep pockets. She admits right there in front of her panicked parents, in front of the stunned ticketing agent, and in front of me, that she only tolerated his presence because of the massive financial cushion his rich dad provided. She tells Derek that she always knew he was weak. She tells him she knew he would do anything to please her, but she assumed his prestigious corporate job actually paid enough to support her demanding standards. She says that when his accounts started coming up short every month, she stayed because she knew I had money. She knew I had a paid-off house and solid retirement savings built from decades of hard labor. She explicitly states that she viewed my bank accounts as her ultimate safety net. She tolerated my son's desperate need for her constant approval solely because she believed my lifelong labor would eventually fund her lavish lifestyle forever. Now that the financial faucet has been completely and permanently frozen, she looks at him and says she is officially done. She tells him he is a broke, worthless liar and that she wants a divorce the second they figure out how to get back home. She curses him out with words so foul and hateful that I see Derek physically shrink under the immense weight of her verbal assault. She strips away every last shred of his manhood, leaving him completely hollow and exposed. Derek realizes in this singular, horrific moment that his entire marriage was nothing more than a financial transaction. His beautiful wife never truly loved him. His sophisticated in-laws never truly respected him. They only loved the access to my hard-earned money that he desperately provided. And now that he has severed the tie to me, he has absolutely nothing left to offer them. The realization shatters him completely. The tall, proud corporate lawyer I raised drops straight to his knees on the hard terrazzo floor of the terminal. It is a sudden, pathetic, physical collapse. His expensive, custom-tailored suit pants hit the ground with a dull, heavy thud. The physical descent is so shocking that the surrounding passengers actually stop walking to stare at the unfolding spectacle. Derek is sobbing uncontrollably. Huge, ugly tears are streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat on his cheeks. His chest heaves as he struggles to draw breath in the cool, air-conditioned room. He reaches out with trembling, desperate hands and grabs the fabric of my pant leg. He clutches the wool of my trousers exactly like a drowning man grabbing onto a small life raft in the middle of a dark, freezing ocean. He sobs loudly, begging me to fix this terrible situation. He tells me his marriage is falling apart right in front of him, and he desperately needs me to save him one last time. He pleads with me to just swipe the card one more time to make them stop yelling and to make Chloe stay with him. I look down at the man kneeling on the floor, clutching my leg in front of hundreds of strangers. I search my heart for any lingering trace of paternal sympathy. For 32 years, I would have moved heaven and earth to protect this boy from pain. I would have gladly taken a bullet for him without a second thought. I worked brutal overtime shifts in the blinding heat so he could go to a good college. I saved my pennies so he could have a strong safety net. I gave him everything I possibly could give a son, but I do not feel sorrow anymore. The profound, heartbreaking grief that consumed me earlier has entirely evaporated, leaving behind an absolute icy resolve. I look at him and I do not see my son. I see a stranger who actively chose to become a parasite. I see a man who decided to sacrifice his own flesh and blood on the altar of social climbing. I reach down and firmly peel his trembling fingers off the fabric of my suit. My grip is strong and completely unyielding. I pry his hands away one by one and take a slow, deliberate step backward, breaking the physical contact completely. The air between us feels as cold as a commercial meat freezer. I look down into his red, swollen eyes. I do not shout. I do not need to raise my voice to be heard over his crying. I speak with a quiet, resonant, absolute finality that cuts through his frantic sobbing like a sharpened steel blade. You sold out your own father to buy the affection of people who despise you, I say, my voice steady and completely devoid of emotion. You stole the money your mother left behind. You drained the emergency fund I built with my own blood and sweat. You threw me into a windowless basement and tried to completely erase my existence just so you could play the role of a wealthy king for a family of broke, arrogant frauds. Derek shakes his head rapidly as fresh tears spill over his cheeks and drip onto the floor. He opens his mouth to offer another pathetic excuse, but I do not give him the space to breathe. "You wanted a trip without me?" I ask, staring directly into his terrified soul. "You wanted to impress a wife who just admitted she only married you for my bank accounts. Well, you got exactly what you asked for. The illusion is over. You are a grown man. You made your choices, and now you are going to live with the absolute destruction of your own actions. You wanted a trip without me. You got it. Pay the tab yourself." I turn my back on him without a single ounce of hesitation. I do not wait to hear his response. I do not look back to see him weeping on the floor, surrounded by the people who used him. I walk away. I grip the leather handle of my overnight bag, and I walk toward the boarding ramp. I walk with the calm, measured stride of a man who has reclaimed his dignity and severed a rotting limb to save his own life. The sound of his sobbing fades into the background noise of the terminal as I prepare to embark on a long, peaceful journey entirely on my own. The mahogany counter feels smooth and cool beneath my fingertips. The young ticketing agent is looking at me with a profound mixture of awe and professional respect. The chaotic shrieking of my former family is still echoing in the cavernous Miami terminal, but it sounds like it is coming from a million miles away. It is just background noise now. It is the sound of a television left on in another room while you are busy doing something much more important. My focus is entirely on the glowing monitor screen in front of the agent. The digital numbers tell a story of absolute redemption. Over $35,000 has just been forcefully ripped from the hands of the greedy and routed directly back to the man who actually bled for it. I watch the confirmation codes generate one by one on the screen. Each green checkmark on her display represents another shattered illusion for Richard, Pamela, Chloe, and Todd. Each notification is a heavy iron hammer swinging down on the pathetic kingdom my son tried to build on a foundation of theft and lies. I stand there, letting the reality of my reclaimed independence wash over me completely. The heavy knot of grief that had been sitting in my chest for months, the agonizing pain of watching my boy turn into a monster is entirely gone. It has been replaced by a surging, powerful warmth. I am not a victim. I am a survivor of 35 years in the sweltering Georgia freight yards. I know how to handle leverage, and right now I hold absolutely all of it. The terminal manager approaches the desk with a hurried but composed stride. He is an older gentleman wearing a crisp navy blazer with sharp gold epaulets on his shoulders. He has clearly been monitoring the situation from a distance, recognizing the potential for a massive public relations disaster in his VIP lobby. He steps up beside the young agent and offers me a short, deeply respectful nod. He addresses me by my last name and asks if there is anything the cruise line can do to ensure my personal boarding process is as smooth and comfortable as possible. He apologizes for the loud disturbance occurring just a few yards away, gesturing subtly toward the complete meltdown happening among my former in-laws. I look at the manager and I smile. It is not a bitter or malicious smile. It is the calm, relaxed expression of a man who has just woken up from a long, terrible nightmare. I tell him that the disturbance has absolutely nothing to do with me anymore. I tell him those people are complete strangers to me now. But I do have one final request before I walk through those security doors. I pull my phone back out of my pocket and open the digital ship deck plan. I point to the massive corner cabin located on the highest passenger level of the vessel. The owner's suite. The very room I had originally booked with the life insurance money left by my beautiful late wife. The room my son had cowardly transferred to his useless brother-in-law. I look the manager squarely in the eye. I tell him I want that suite back. I want my original room restored to my name and my name alone. With over $35,000 currently processing as a refund to my primary bank account, I tell him I am more than happy to pay whatever upgrade difference is required to secure that specific cabin. The manager does not even hesitate. He types his override credentials into the computer system with rapid practiced efficiency. He tells me there will be absolutely no additional charge. He insists that given the highly unusual circumstances and the sheer volume of my original booking, the cruise line is honored to upgrade my single ticket back to the premier level on a complimentary basis. He clicks the final button on his keyboard. The small printer whirs to life. A heavy premium boarding pass slides out of the machine. It is not the standard blue or silver paper they hand to everyone else. It is a thick, textured gold card with my name embossed in bold, dark letters. The manager hands it to me, with both hands forming a gesture of absolute respect. He informs me that my private butler is already waiting at the gangway to escort me directly to my quarters. He tells me the private balcony has been prepared and that a bottle of my preferred sparkling water is currently chilling on ice. I take the gold card and slide it safely into my breast pocket. The transaction is fully complete. The financial rot has been completely excised from my life. I grip the worn leather handle of my overnight bag. I turn my body around slowly, preparing to make the final walk toward the security checkpoint. But before I take that first step toward the ship, I allow myself one last look at the people I am leaving behind. It is a cinematic tableau of absolute self-inflicted destruction. Pamela is sitting on top of one of her massive designer trunks, weeping openly into her hands, while her expensive mascara runs down her cheeks. She is completely stranded in a public building, stripped of the false wealth she used to judge everyone around her. Richard is pacing back and forth with his phone pressed tightly to his ear, aggressively dialing numbers that will inevitably ring straight to voicemail. His wealthy country club friends will not save him today. Todd is sitting on the floor, leaning against a concrete pillar, looking completely vacant and lost. The reality of having to find an actual job to survive the week is slowly sinking into his lazy mind. And then there is Chloe. She is standing with her arms crossed tightly over her chest, screaming at my son with such ferocious hatred that her face is completely flushed red. She is calling him every foul name in the book, blaming him entirely for the evaporation of her luxury lifestyle. She is not comforting her husband in his darkest hour. She is actively destroying whatever is left of his fragile ego. Derek is still on his knees on the hard terrazzo floor. He is staring blankly at the tiles, completely ignoring his screaming wife. His hands are empty. His bank accounts are empty. His soul is entirely empty. He traded a father who would have gladly died for him for a family who only loved his credit limit. Now the limit is zero, and the love is entirely gone. I watch him for a few long seconds. A small part of me, the father who coached his little league baseball games and taught him how to tie a necktie, feels a sudden sharp pang of sorrow. But it is a fleeting, momentary ghost of an emotion. The man kneeling on that floor is not my son. My son died the moment he decided to betray his own blood to impress a bunch of racist financial parasites. The man crying on the floor is just a stranger who made a terrible gamble and lost absolutely everything. I do not feel pity for him. I do not feel the urge to pull him up and dust him off. He built his own cage and now he has to sit in it. I turn my head away from the miserable, screaming mess of his ruined life. I break my visual connection to the past permanently. I square my shoulders, lift my chin, and begin to walk toward the VIP security gates. Every single step I take feels lighter than the one before it. The heavy, thick burden of trying to buy my son's respect is completely gone. The crushing pressure of pretending to be okay while my heart was secretly breaking has vanished. For 3 long years, I carried the weight of my wife's absence and the agonizing distance growing between me and Derek. I walked around like a man carrying an invisible boulder on his back. But today, right now, walking across the polished floors of the Miami cruise terminal, I feel like I am completely floating. I step up to the private security podium designated exclusively for suite guests. The guard smiles warmly and checks my gold boarding pass. He steps aside and motions for me to proceed through the glass double doors leading out to the boarding bridge. As the glass doors slide open, I am immediately hit by a powerful rushing wave of warm tropical air. The scent of the ocean, the heavy salt, the humidity, and the faint mechanical smell of engine fuel washes over me. It is the smell of a new beginning. It is the smell of absolute unfiltered freedom. I walk down the long enclosed gangway. The walls are made of clear glass, offering a spectacular panoramic view of the massive white cruise ship docked against the concrete pier. The water below is a deep sparkling blue, catching the bright midday sun and reflecting it back in 1,000 dancing points of light. The rhythmic calypso music playing from the ship speakers grows louder with every single step I take. I can hear the cheerful, energetic sound of a steel drum band welcoming the passengers aboard. It is a joyous, vibrant sound that completely drowns out the memory of the screaming and the crying I left behind in the terminal building. I breathe the salty air deep into my lungs, letting it fill me up entirely. I feel a sudden incredible surge of energy coursing through my veins. I am 67 years old, but right now I feel like I am 30. I am a man who has survived a lifetime of hard manual labor, a devastating personal loss, and the ultimate betrayal of his own flesh and blood. I am still standing. I am still breathing. I am still highly capable of finding joy in this complicated, unpredictable world. I reach the end of the gangway and step firmly onto the polished wooden deck of the luxury vessel. A young man wearing a pristine white uniform and white cotton gloves is waiting for me at the entrance. He smiles brightly and addresses me directly by my name. He introduces himself as my personal butler, assigned exclusively to the owner's suite for the duration of the entire voyage. He offers to take my heavy leather overnight bag from my hands. For a brief second, my old blue-collar instincts flare up. I have carried my own bags my entire life. I have never asked another man to do my heavy lifting. But then I stop. I look at the young man. I smile back at him, and I gently hand him the leather strap. I tell him thank you. I tell him I greatly appreciate his help. It is finally time to let someone else carry the weight for a little while. I follow him through the grand atrium of the massive ship. It is a stunning display of wealth and architectural luxury. Huge crystal chandeliers hang from the high ceilings, casting rainbows of light across the pristine marble floors. Glass elevators glide silently up and down the walls. Waiters walk past carrying silver trays of colorful tropical drinks. We bypass the crowded elevator banks and take a private express lift straight to the top deck. The doors open to a quiet, secluded hallway lined with rich, dark wood paneling. The butler leads me to a set of heavy double doors at the very end of the corridor. He taps a key card against the electronic lock and pushes the doors open. I step inside the owner's suite, and the breath is completely stolen from my lungs. The room is incredibly massive. It is significantly larger than the first apartment my late wife and I rented when we were newly married. There is a plush living area with a sweeping sectional sofa, a full dining table, and a smooth marble wet bar. But the true masterpiece of the room is the wall of floor-to-ceiling glass doors leading out to the private wraparound balcony. I walk straight past the luxurious furniture. I slide the heavy glass doors open and step out onto the warm teak wood deck. The view is absolutely breathtaking. I can see the entire Miami skyline stretching out along the beautiful coast. The turquoise water of the bay glitters under the cloudless, bright blue sky. A gentle ocean breeze blows past me, cooling the sweat on my brow and bringing the clean, crisp scent of the open sea. I walk over to the thick glass railing and rest my hands against the smooth, cool surface. I look down at the dock far below. I can barely make out the tiny shapes of people moving around the terminal entrance. They look so incredibly small from up here. They look completely insignificant. The anger, the deep betrayal, the profound disappointment I felt earlier today seems to belong to a completely different lifetime. I am no longer tied to their miserable, toxic world. I am standing on the top deck of a magnificent ship preparing to sail into the vast open ocean. I look up at the bright blue sky. I think about my beautiful wife. I think about her warm smile and her gentle, comforting hands. I know she would be incredibly proud of me right now. She always told me I needed to learn how to stand up for myself, to stop letting people walk all over my good nature. She always told me that family is important, but self-respect is absolutely non-negotiable. I finally learned the lesson she tried to teach me all those long years ago. I am taking this trip for both of us now. I am going to drink the vintage wine. I am going to sit on the private beach cabanas. I am going to watch the beautiful sunset over the tropical islands, and I am going to celebrate the quiet, beautiful peace of a life well lived. The ship's horn blasts a deep, resonant note signaling the imminent departure. The massive vessel begins to vibrate slightly as the powerful engines roar to life, pushing us away from the concrete dock and out toward the open horizon. I close my eyes, let the ocean breeze wash over my face and smile. The heavy chains have been completely severed. The leeches have been left behind on the shore to feast on each other. I am a free man, and the voyage of a lifetime is just beginning. If you found value in this story of reclaiming dignity, please leave a like to support this channel. Subscribe so you do not miss my next life story. Tell me in the comments exactly where you are watching this video from and what time it is there right now. It brings a lot of joy to my heart to see how far my stories travel and to connect with good people all over the world. The rhythm of the ocean is the greatest healer a man can find. For 14 glorious, uninterrupted days, I sat on the private teakwood balcony of that magnificent suite, letting the warm, salt breeze wash away the bitter residue of the last 3 years. I spent my afternoons sipping a reserve-aged bourbon, watching the endless turquoise horizon stretch out until it touched the sky. There were no arrogant country club snobs demanding my attention or judging my clothes. There were no entitled children plotting to drain my bank accounts. There was only the gentle roll of the ship and the profound, liberating silence of a man who had finally taken his own life back. I ate premium steaks cut like butter. I read good books. I finally took the time to truly mourn my beautiful late wife in complete peace, honoring her memory the right way. But while I was enjoying the luxurious sunshine of the tropical islands, a massive Category 5 hurricane of reality was completely leveling the artificial world my son had built for himself back on the mainland. A man cannot construct a life entirely out of stolen money and hollow promises and expect it to stand when the winds of absolute truth start blowing. My financial advisor kept me updated via secure messages, and the details of their collapse were absolutely staggering to read. When I walked away from that ticketing desk, leaving them stranded at the port of Miami, the Sterling family had exactly 0 viable options to return home. Their personal credit cards were declined across the board. They could not afford a single rental car. They could not book a discount regional flight. They were completely and utterly stranded in the blistering Florida heat. Richard and Pamela were forced to drag their overweight designer trunks down the scorching hot sidewalks. They took a crowded city bus to a rundown transit station where they scraped together the last few dollar bills in their pockets. They used that wrinkled cash to buy tickets for a grueling 24-hour Greyhound bus ride. I want you to picture that scenario for just a moment. Imagine Pamela and Richard in their expensive resort wear crammed into the narrow, stained seats of a budget passenger bus for an entire day and night. Imagine them sitting right next to the cramped restroom, enduring every single bone-rattling bump on the interstate, surrounded by the very working-class people they had spent their entire lives mocking and avoiding. It was a ride of absolute poetic justice, and the exact moment those heavy bus tires finally hit their hometown pavement, the final devastating blow was delivered. Chloe did not even wait to unpack her luggage. The very same day they returned, she marched straight into a local county courthouse and officially filed for divorce. She cited irreconcilable differences, but everyone involved knows the true reason. Her personal automated teller machine had officially run completely out of funds. Derek had nothing left to offer. She took whatever tiny shred of dignity he still possessed and threw it away without a second thought. She abandoned the marriage the instant the stolen money stopped flowing, proving everything I had realized back in that Miami cruise terminal. But true justice is not just about a single satisfying moment of instant karma. A wise man knows that you cannot just trim the tops of the weeds. You have to pull the toxic roots entirely out of the ground so they can never grow back and choke your garden again. When my voyage finally came to an end, I did not go home to rest. I drove straight from the harbor to the downtown office of my legal team. I sat down at a heavy oak conference table with my primary attorney and instructed him to fundamentally restructure my entire financial legacy. For decades, I had meticulously built a robust safety net for my only child. I had carefully drafted legal documents to ensure Derek would inherit the house, my retirement portfolios, and every single asset I accumulated through 35 years of breaking my back in the dispatch yards. I looked my lawyer right in the eye and told him to burn the entire document to the ground. We spent 4 solid hours drafting the new paperwork. I formally and permanently removed Derek from my last will and testament. I completely revoked his access to any future family trusts. I legally severed every single financial cord that connected my hard-earned wealth to his name. I made absolutely certain that when my time on this earth finally comes to an end, the boy who tried to erase my existence will not receive a single dime of my legacy. Instead, my estate will go toward funding educational scholarships for young working-class kids from my old neighborhood. I want to help kids who actually understand the value of $1 and who respect the sacrifices of their elders. But I did not stop at simply protecting my future assets. I had to address the crimes of the past. The $12,000 Derek stole from the joint emergency savings account was not just a minor family dispute. It was an unauthorized, malicious theft. Following the strict advice of my legal team, I officially filed a formal civil suit against my own son to recover the stolen funds. I know there are people out there who might think that is too harsh. They might say that a father should always forgive his child, no matter what the offense might be. But I respectfully disagree. Forgiving a parasite just gives it permission to keep feeding on your energy. True justice is about permanently cutting off the leeches so you can finally heal. If my story resonated with you, please hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss my next life story. Thank you for your amazing support. Always protect your own peace today. When you reach my stage in life, you spend a significant amount of time sitting quietly on the front porch, looking out at the yard and thinking deeply about the legacy you are going to leave behind when you are gone. For decades, I firmly believed my ultimate legacy was tied entirely to my son's professional and personal success. As a black man coming up in the grueling logistics yards of Georgia, I had to fight tooth and nail for every single inch of ground I managed to gain in this world. The relentless southern sun beat down on my back, The heavy rumbling machinery rattled my aging bones, and the long, exhausting shifts stole precious time I could have spent resting my tired body. But I did it all with a willing and hopeful spirit because I thought I was building a solid, unbreakable foundation for my bloodline. I desperately wanted my boy to wear a custom-tailored suit to an air-conditioned office instead of wearing a greasy uniform in a dusty warehouse. I wanted him to hold a leather briefcase instead of a heavy steel wrench. I gave him the absolute best parts of the world on a silver platter. But what I failed to realize during all those long years of sacrifice is that when you hand someone the world, without making them understand the brutal, agonizing cost of buying it, they will inevitably drop it and complain that it was too heavy to hold. I want whoever is listening to this video right now to lean in close and listen to me very carefully. I am speaking directly to the fathers, the grandfathers, and the hard-working men who have spent their entire adult lives breaking their backs to provide a comfortable, secure life for their families. Never set yourself on fire to keep ungrateful people warm. It is a harsh, bitter truth to swallow, but it is a vital survival lesson you must brand into your mind forever. Society teaches us to endure silently. We are told that unconditional love means unconditional financial provision. We are told that a real man absorbs the pain, the disrespect, and the quiet abuse just to keep a solid roof over his family and hot food on the dinner table. But there is a massive fundamental difference between nurturing a growing child and feeding a greedy parasite. If you willingly light yourself on fire to warm someone who does not respect the ground you walk on, they will simply stand around your burning body, warm, their manicured hands on your glowing ashes, and then complain to everyone else that the smoke from your sacrifice is getting in their eyes. They will watch you burn down to absolutely nothing, and then have the sheer audacity to ask why the fire did not last a little bit longer. A father's love for his child might be a fierce, unconditional force of nature, but his respect, his daily presence, and his hard-earned wallet must be earned with absolute, unwavering loyalty. The exact moment a grown child decides to cross that sacred boundary, the moment they look at your lifelong blood, sweat, and tears, and view it as nothing more than a convenient stepping stone for their own selfish social climbing. You have to make the hardest choice a parent can ever make in this life. You have to pack up your broken heart, gather every last ounce of your remaining dignity, and walk away completely. It goes against every single biological instinct we possess, deep inside our chests. We are permanently wired to protect our offspring. We are wired to fix their terrible mistakes and shield them from the cold, unforgiving reality of the real world. But you absolutely cannot heal someone who actively enjoys watching you bleed out. You cannot save a drowning man who is violently trying to push your head underwater just to catch a quick breath for himself. Walking away from Derek at that terminal was not an act of cruelty or malice. It was an act of profound, necessary self-preservation. Since I returned from that glorious trip to the Caribbean, my days have taken on a completely different and beautiful rhythm. I wake up early just as the morning sun is starting to rise over the horizon, and I make myself a fresh pot of strong black coffee. I sit in my favorite wooden rocking chair, and I listen to the birds singing in the old oak trees. The house is completely quiet, but it is a good, comforting kind of quiet. It is not the heavy, anxious, suffocating silence of waiting for the next financial crisis to solve or the next ungrateful demand to meet. My bank accounts are fully secure. My property is legally protected. The rigid legal barriers I put in place with my attorneys have formed an impenetrable fortress around my hard-won peace of mind. True justice is not just about watching the people who wronged you face their sudden, devastating karma. The entertaining spectacle of their ruin fades quickly with time. True, lasting justice is waking up every single morning knowing that the blood-sucking leeches have been permanently removed from your skin. It is the brilliant realization that your energy, your wealth, and your capacity for love now belong entirely to you. I am no longer a supporting financial character in an arrogant in-laws fake aristocratic drama. I am the sole author of my own remaining chapters, and the pen belongs strictly to me. That is the final end of my story. It was a heavy, exhausting burden to carry around in my soul for those 3 long years, but setting it down and sharing the unfiltered truth with all of you has lightened my spirit more than words can adequately describe. Now I have to ask you a very serious question. What would you have done if you were standing in my shoes that day at the busy terminal? Would you have caved to the pressure and swiped your credit card one last time to save your son's marriage to a manipulative, materialistic woman, or would you have turned your back and left them exactly like I did? I genuinely want to know your honest thoughts on the matter. If you believe I did the right thing by walking away, and if you feel that same righteous, satisfying joy seeing true justice served, please hit that like button to warm this old man's heart today. It lets me know that there are still good, decent people out there who value respect and hard, honest work over superficial status and fake wealth. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel right now so you never miss another upload, because life always has more fascinating lessons to teach us all. And finally, please leave a comment down below telling me exactly what city you are watching this video from and what time it is there right now. I sit on my front porch with my morning coffee, and I read every single one of your messages. It brings me immense, overwhelming joy to know exactly where in the world my brothers and sisters are tuning in from. Keep your heads held high. God bless you all. Protect your peace at all costs, and I will see you in the next story.